Hi friends, thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I am Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Concussion Coach podcast. I am genuinely so happy to get to introduce you to my guest today. I've known Steve Clapp for almost exactly a year now, which, to be honest, is crazy because I feel like we've known each other forever. He found me via an internet search and we ended up coaching together, and I've been so lucky to get to witness the progress he's made, and it honestly makes my heart so happy to see. I'm very grateful to have gotten to know Steve, and I'm excited for everyone listening to get to know him a bit today as well. So here is some more info about Steve. Steve Clapp is a retired marketing and finance professional from the Chicago area. After suffering a concussion in January 2025, he found himself dealing with persistent post-concussion symptoms that affected nearly every aspect of daily life. Visual overload, screen intolerance, sleep disruption, and visual vertigo made even ordinary environments difficult to navigate. Like many people with PCS, Steve spent months searching for answers while navigating a healthcare system that often felt confusing and inconsistent before ultimately finding providers and guidance that helped him put him on the right path to recovery. In this conversation, Steve shares how self-advocacy became one of the most important parts of his recovery. He discusses the setbacks, breakthroughs, and providers who helped him along the way, including NCX Brain Recovery and neuro-optometrist Devin Duvall. Most importantly, he shares a message of hope. Recovery is rarely linear, but with the right guidance, the right providers, and persistence, it is possible to get to a much better place. Steve's story is also a reminder that healing isn't just about treatment. It's about learning to navigate uncertainty, manage the emotional side of recovery, and continue moving forward even when progress isn't always obvious. His experience offers practical lessons and encouragement for anyone trying to find their way through post-concussion syndrome. So thank you so much for being here, Steve. I'm very, very happy for people to get to hear your experience and story here.
Well, it's great to be with you.
Thanks. So why don't we just jump right in and have you tell us about the injury? How long ago was it? What happened? Those kinds of things.
Sure. January 11th, 2025, ordinary Friday morning. And I decided I need to get something out of the garage. We'd had an ice storm 2 days prior, some light snow the day before. And as made my way on the driveway, my driveway is sloped down to the garage, and I fell. And because of the slope, I fell in a way where my head ricocheted off of the pavement. And it was one of those where I knew right away that it wasn't just bumping my head. And I had vertigo. It took me a while to collect myself, but I made my way down to the garage and took a few minutes and gathered myself. And I didn't know much about concussions at that point, but I had enough knowledge to know that I needed to go to the hospital because I needed to get a scan. That's about the extent of my knowledge at that point. But I did, and fortunately, there was no brain bleed or fractures of that nature. So I got home, and from the outset, I would characterize my concussion experience as having two phases. And the first phase lasted I'd say about 3 months. It started, so when I got home with a really, really bad headache, nausea, vertigo, sleep disruption, that lasted for a few days. At the time, I was working part-time at Home Depot, and I took a week off. I went back to work, and for the most part, integrated back into my life. I was able to work on screens. I was able to do just about everything that I was doing before. And I noticed after about 2 months when I was working, particularly in visually intensive type of activities, that I would have some visual fatigue after 3 or 4 hours. And I remember thinking, well, I'm pretty much healed from this concussion, but I do have this kind of this nagging thing, and occasionally I would experience some sleep disruption. It wasn't bad at that point. It was I would just wake up a few times at night. So this is where my saga sort of begins, and I sought out a concussion clinic. It's a really well-known clinic here in Chicago. I saw this person was a fairly senior person and explained, went to see them, had an appointment, explained what was going on. They did a cursory exam, my balance, looked at eye tracking, some visual stuff, and then recommended that I go see a vestibular therapist, which I did. And then the vestibular therapy, I would say I was in it for about six, let's call it 6 sessions. For the most part, there was a little bit of neck work involved because we weren't sure if I had experienced any whiplash. But again, for the most part, I was doing this therapy and then I was doing some of the exercises at home, mostly visual, and things were moving along. And I remember the last session, it was on a Friday, and this would have been around the probably end of April at this point. And for some reason, the therapist decided to get more aggressive with me. So the exercises that we did were different and more, I don't know, more involved, more complicated, and the intensity was much higher. And that's when everything changed. I went home that night and I woke up the next morning and I had vertigo, and all of a sudden, my world changed. And that's when I entered the PCS world, and I would call this phase 2. And it was really a major flare. And all of a sudden, I would become visually overwhelmed when I would be in a real visually intensive environment like a retail store or a crowded restaurant or even a family dinner. And so, I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that at all. It really threw me for a loop. And I think that well, I'm going to talk about self-advocacy, but it speaks to that because, um, sometimes it's difficult to find the resources that you need, the providers that you need. Sometimes the ones that are supposed to be out there to really help you aren't the ones that really help you. And my point is not to indict these folks, but I think that it's very helpful to have somebody guiding you through, through the experience, but also with some experience with folks who have a lot of experience in working with concussion patients. Now, my assumption was that these professionals that I saw they did, but the one thing that did happen was I was doing lots of visual exercises, but had not been diagnosed at that point by a neuro-optometrist. And that's just a flat out not right, at least in my mind. And so if anybody out there is experiencing visual impairment, visual issues, I would not be doing exercises, any kind of visual work if you haven't seen a neuro-optometrist. And I had not at that point. And so that, that was sort of frustrating for me. But so my next step then,
Here, can I pause you?
yeah,
I'm
go
going to
ahead.
ask, I have a couple questions if that's okay, really quick. When you first went in and got the scans done after you first had the injury, did they, and you were cleared, you didn't have a fracture or a brain bleed, did they tell you anything about concussion or say, hey, you did have a concussion or you probably did and here's what to look out for? Was there anything like that?
Zero.
Okay. Which
Yes.
is not uncommon. So I want to like bring that out because if I just feel like there's a lot of room for improvement in the system. And so if anybody listening to this is in the ER or in urgent care or something, like let's work on getting people information about concussions.
It would be really helpful because I didn't even receive a pamphlet, nothing, and they didn't mention and talk about it. And I do remember that night I was, we were, I was feeling really, really bad, but we had like the TV on, and I just remember how overwhelming that was for me.
Mm.
Right. And so if I had known what I know now, the last thing I would be doing was watching television.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes. Thank you. And how did you know then to look for a concussion specialist? Because you were saying that it was a while before you went and you did see a concussion clinic there in Chicago. How did you know to go there?
Right. So I'm really curious. So after the concussion, I spent quite a bit of time online trying to learn what I could to better understand, what is this injury all about? What do I need to do?
So did you just know that it was like you figured it was a concussion since you didn't have a brain bleed? That must be the other
Yes.
thing. Okay.
Yeah, I knew that I had a concussion based on the acute symptoms that I had experienced early on, and then some of the symptoms that I had been experiencing then moving forward. But they were very muted. I really felt like I was working on the last 5-10%.
Mm.
And and so that's why I was really surprised when everything changed that quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so interesting. And it sounds like with the vestibular therapy that you were doing was did you feel like had you made improvements? Did you feel like there was changes happening?
No, I have to say no.
Okay.
I don't remember really feeling like things were changing.
Okay.
But looking back, the exercises I were doing was fairly straightforward. And really, now in hindsight, we're not addressing the core issue with my vision, right? I've discovered after being diagnosed.
Hmm.
So the exercise I was doing would certainly, I don't know, they weren't helping. I guess that's bottom line. But
And
how could they? They really didn't know what was going on with my vision.
yeah, yeah. And that's I think just again all the professionals out there listening and people who are on the recovery journey just being aware that multiple this is the one of the problems that I see coming up over and over again is the siloed care. Like you go to one person who knows one thing and they do that, but the brain injury is impacting so many different systems, and it's really important to get help on all of those systems, and ideally at the same time, ideally with therapists who are either know all of it or are in communication with other people who are concussion specialists. So it is so complicated, and your story is not unique. And some
Right.
people go to vestibular therapy and they find a lot of improvement and they're like, okay, sweet, I'm good to go. And then there are a lot of people I think who go and it's like, okay, well, this was maybe one thing, but it didn't hit all the things that needed to be addressed.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious to again for the therapists out there who are listening, just it's good to be aware of where we in general are maybe falling short so that we can improve. So I'm curious, Steve, with your experience, was it the same therapist that saw you on that last session that you had been working with the whole time?
Yes.
And did they tell you why they were being more aggressive or more intense in their treatment? Or was it just like,
No.
okay, this is the end, so we're just going to push you hard kind of thing?
No. And it was not the end. Like I think I probably had another maybe 3 or 4 sessions beyond that. It
Oh,
turned out to be the end because I didn't go back.
I see. Okay.
But no, there was, and I don't remember asking either.
Okay. So yeah, that's another thing. Like, feel free to ask if you're the patient and if you're the therapist, if you're like, it's really that communication piece I think is so important of like, here's what we're
Sure.
doing, here's why, and let me know if anything's different for you in this experience with this, right? Like, I just think that that's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. All right. Those are my questions. We can keep going. So
Okay.
phase two here, where PCS kind of reared its ugly head. Um,
Yes.
what was
So
there?
then again, I went back to the well and I was doing a little bit more research, and I knew that my primary issue was visual. And so my symptoms would be visual overwhelm. So imagine yourself walking into a retail store or to a doctor's appointment, and all of a sudden just, your eye fatigue and just like, wow, I need to get out of here and I need to shut down. And then later on that night, I would have, sleep disruption. Early on in phase two, it was, I can't stay asleep. And it basically my nervous system was just not allowing the deep sleep cycle to kick in. So I'd sleep for maybe 45, 50 minutes and wake up. And so that just, it just became debilitating after time. It just didn't feel rested. So I decided then to get a diagnosis from a neuro-optometrist. Figure, all right, let me see if I can figure out what's really going on here. So I went to a provider here in Chicago, and this provider had a really unique way of diagnosing, you know, my issue, right? So there are different diagnostic philosophies. His relied on provoking the symptoms to identify the problem.
Hmm.
And so what he did is he put me through a series of visual irritants, lack of a better word. And he would ask me, then, hey, rate this on a scale of 0 to 10. How bad is this one? And this lasted 20 or 30 minutes. And by the end of this thing, like you could mop me off the floor. I was a mess. And that in itself provoked a mini flare because I had sleep disruption. I remember after that for like a solid week.
Mm.
And and again, what's fascinating is I didn't wind up following his recommendation for therapy and working with him, but and we'll talk about Dr. Duvall later. But interestingly enough, his diagnosis was right, which I thought was kind of fascinating. So he did get it right. He just had a different way of getting it.
Mm.
And one of the valuable things that I did learn from talking to him was that I was still working part-time at this point. He said, if you're going to recover, you're gonna have to quit your job. And so this was part of phase two where now my world was starting to get smaller. And the thing about my job was it was just a part-time job, but I had been working there for 5 years and I had friends there. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I had a great supervisor and really, really liked my coworkers. And I literally had to quit overnight. I went in and just said, hey, I can't do this. And my supervisor, guy was awesome. I mean, he bent over backwards to try and make it work. For like 2, 3 weeks, he was, all right, well, don't do that anymore. Try and do this. And it got to the point where, I mean, literally, I would just walk in and kind of stare at the shelf because that's all I could take. And those environments were just so intense for where I was at that time, just didn't work.
Mm.
So I quit my job, and now I'm kind of lost, right? Because I've gone to see 3 professionals. I I don't really know where I am and on the spectrum of things, sort of the healing spectrum. And it's sort of the one pillar that about PCS is it's nonlinear. Everything about it is nonlinear. The
Yes.
diagnosis is nonlinear. Finding providers is nonlinear. The treatment, your recovery. And so now I honestly felt like I was in the abyss.
Mm.
And what was happening was that events, like I would go to a store again or a doctor's appointment, and my triggers were getting shorter and the symptoms were getting more extreme. So I remember one time I I spent maybe an hour on screen doing some stuff on a computer screen, desktop computer. And then I went to the hardware store to pick up some stuff for a project. I spent like an hour there and it triggered my symptoms. And I didn't really feel terribly overwhelmed there, but then what happened is my sleep disruption then moved from, hey, I can't stay asleep to now I had insomnia. I couldn't go to sleep. And there were nights where I got zero sleep, where literally I would sit there and just stare at the wall. And then I'm up, hey, 5 o'clock, I might as well just get up.
Oh my
And
gosh, that's so miserable.
it's really tough. And this was right before, that that I started working with you. And it was tough because July 4th was coming up. We had to cancel our family barbecue. So that didn't happen. So things are starting to fall off my life. My life's starting to get pretty darn small. I'm listening to, audiobooks, in a quiet room. There wasn't much that I could do without really provoking the symptoms. And so that was tough. That was probably the toughest part when I talked to you, because I think for me, the two of the most important components were hope and expectations. And when I came to you, I was just starting to lose hope. I'm like, I feel like I am, sort of walking down the right path. I'm seeking out the right providers, but it's just not working.
Mhm.
My expectation was that I was going to, recover, to get better, and none of that was happening. In fact, I was backsliding. I was getting worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this. I think that will be so relatable for people just to hear, and it would be so validating for people. And I think they'll relate that your world getting smaller, your life getting small. I think it's participating in meaningful activities is what gives life its meaning, right? Like being able to
Sure.
do the things and engage. That's like, and so it makes a lot of sense that hope is dwindling and not knowing what expectations should be. Like that is one of the things about this injury that is so challenging. And I just think you're speaking to it so well. Thank you for sharing that. And and don't worry, guys, we're going to get to a hopeful place, but it's just
Yes.
it is so real, and I want people to know that and feel that. Like it just is heartbreaking. And when you're talking about the I want to just say too, point out that you mentioned your supervisor who was like bending over backwards for you, trying to make it work for you. I'm so grateful for people out there who like you have a good community, you have good support, but even then you still need the right kinds of support. And it sounds like I'm so grateful that they were, supportive and helpful and did the best that they could. But yeah, it does matter the type of help that you get for recovery. But I mean, obviously for the emotional and mental part, that is very wonderful to have loving and supportive people. But this is a real and a very, very challenging thing. So thank you for speaking to that. I also want to ask you really quick before you go on with the insomnia and the sleep disturbances, disruptions. Did you was that something that you knew automatically was related to the vision stuff, or did you seek out, like, talk to a doctor about sleep medication, or like trying to get help
No,
on just specifically for the sleep issues, or did you know that it was related to the vision?
I knew that it was part of what I was going through because it had evolved over time. It started off with, not being able to stay asleep to not being able to go to sleep, and it was on a continuum. Yeah, and not being able to go to sleep is really tough because there's a certain amount of anxiety that's a part of that too, or becomes a part of it over
Yeah.
time, and that's challenging.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
know.
So
When you say like getting zero sleep, my mind first goes to like, I remember when I was a little kid and going to a sleepover and being like, we're going to do an all-nighter. We're going to stay up all night and thinking that was so fun. And like, I think I did it once and I was like, oh, I'm so tired the next day. And then it's like, no, it's not actually fun. It's not a good
exactly,
idea. So it's
exactly.
not a party when you can't go to sleep at night. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Continue with your story. You're doing a great job.
Oh, no problem. So okay, so that's the point where I don't know, I had this notion that I can do this by myself, but that became pretty clear as I got into this spider's web that I could do it. And that's when I reached out to you because I felt like, wow, I need help, right? I need a guide who can guide me through this process. And the one thing, so that's when I started working with you, and which was, I would say, probably the most important thing that I did in my recovery because it went beyond, um, getting on the right path as far as, healing goes. But well, let me take that back. Finding the right providers was really key, but the healing recover also requires thought about how you structure your days and, how to work with your nervous system, because my nervous system was so messed up at that time. And, that was really key, was trying to do what I could to stabilize it. Right. So that's when so we started working together. And I think one of the things that was really, really helpful that we did was, you really encouraged me just really simply, like, okay, you gotta get out of the house, Steve, right? Like, because I just, I think I was just so tired of the insomnia, and I developed this anxiety around it that I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna listen to audiobooks today. That would be it. And you're like, no, you need to go out. What do you like to do? Right? It's like, let's go back to square one, Steve. What do you like to do? And so, yeah, so I started gardening again, and I started doing things that gave me joy. And so that very, very important. And it became worthwhile, even though it might have an effect on my sleep. It was like, that's okay.
Mhm.
You're starting to feel like you're alive again. So that's good.
Yeah.
And then we started from there. We started launching in. Okay, what are the big pillars going to be in recovery? And that's when we talked about. I think at that point I knew that a concussion clinic was something I really had to think about seriously. And I knew that I had visual issues, but I also knew that, just doing visual therapy was not going to be the answer to it, right? Because
Mhm.
as I mentioned before, my nervous system was so messed up that it was going to require more than just vision therapy. And so that's when, we started talking about, okay, so what would make the most sense? And we arrived at going to NCX. And again, I have to, give you all the credit, because, you can do some of this research on your own, but I was not aware of you threw out lots of options. Hey, you should really think about these options. And, NCX was one of them. And so then I was able to go through those and explore those, with your help, and then arrived at NCX. That felt like it was probably the best fit for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I do feel like that the physiological piece is key to recovery, and it is. I'm grateful to know of a bunch of places. There are a lot of places out there that can provide quality help and in a way that makes a difference. And so, yeah, and through your research of the things that I shared with you and others, that you were able to find something that was effective. So yeah, it is key, and I
Wow.
appreciate that. Thank you.
So and again, the right providers exist. There are tremendous professionals out there, and you've got to find, you just have to find the right ones that fit for you. And experience matters.
Mm.
And, for me, working with you, that's what I was looking at. I mean, they've been vetted. You knew of these places. So that that really that really helped. And so I went to NCX. I went for 2 weeks, and it was NCX is amazing. I just man, I just can't I can't thank them enough. And a few things that stand out for me. The first thing is everybody in that organization is committed to your healing.
Yes.
I just can't underscore that. Every time, everybody who I met everybody in the company, to a person, I knew they sincerely wanted me to get better and would do anything they could in order to help my recovery. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is very small. I worked with a few therapists, but primarily two, with Blake and with Kaylee, who's been on your podcasts.
Yes.
Both of them, I mean, both of them are amazing therapists, just amazing, highly skilled, very patient, very compassionate. And, it was tough. The 2 weeks were really tough. There was a point, there was a point in week 2, I thought I was going to flush out. And, but thank God, that morning I walked in and Kaylee was there and Nate was there and they kind of talked me off the ledge and, I got through it. And it was just really key to my recovery. I felt like I was recovering while I was there. But it was tough. But then really when I got home is when I could, the arc it continued.
Mhm.
But I just can't say enough. Can't say enough. If anyone is considering it, just go.
That is
That's
high praise. I love this so much. I'm so glad that it
yeah,
was they are amazing and they care about helping people get better and each individual like they definitely care about you. So
yeah.
I love oh man, I love this. And I want to give you credit too because you put in the work. Like you did it and you did it. It's not like you said it is not an easy process.
It's
Yeah.
hard. I mean, it's a lot of shaking and baking with your brain, and I'm old, man. I'm 65. Like I went in there and I was like, man, I hope I can do this. I'm not in terrible shape, but I was not in great physical condition because I hadn't been doing anything for a while, but I got through it. And like I said, those guys are with you every step of the way. They're monitoring your symptoms. They're and the thing I really loved about it is, they're adapting the exercises and they're molding them to you, sort of your symptoms and what you need. And then, Kaylee's amazing. Like, she's, you know, suffered through a number of brain injuries. So she knows this stuff personally, which was really helpful for me. I spent a lot of time asking her questions, really trying to pick her brain because she just has such a wealth of experience. So
Mm,
so anyway, that was a key to my recovery.
that's awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you. And so you did that for 2 weeks and then you went home.
I did. So I had a pretty good sense when I was there, and she had been a vision therapist beforehand, and she just encouraged me and sort of like it was sort of like Cliff, go home, take a month, take some time, and see where you're at. Because I had a feeling that I was going to need vision therapy, that we weren't that there was some work to do beyond what I had
Mhm.
done at NCX, and so that's what I did. I went home, I spent a month, and I was a lot better. I felt better. I was sleeping better. My nervous system had was in much better condition. But I did know that, okay, I'm still feeling some issues with my vision. So that's when I decided that, and again, working with you, it was like, okay, there are a few choices out there for a neuro-optometrist who should I work with. And ultimately, the answer became pretty easy for me. It was Dr. Duvall. And if anybody listening, who, if you've got some challenges, you've done it, Bethany, you've done at least 2 or 3 podcasts with Dr. Duvall.
Yeah, me too.
Listen to the podcast. That's what I did. So Dr. Duvall is amazing. I mean, that guy I mean, he's just amazing.
Mhm.
And so what I did, I went out, I went back to Provo, I did a evaluation with him. And so his style, he didn't he didn't sort of provoke my symptoms. He really spent the time to understand how my vision was communicating with my brain and then
Mhm.
coming to a diagnosis that way. It was like I just remember him saying, he said, okay, here's what I think is going on. And my vision or visual issues were around my peripheral vision. And I just remember saying to him, well, is that something that we can improve on? And he just said with the most confidence, oh yeah, we can do that. we're not going to get you back to 100%, but our goal is to get you like 80%. And, that was like getting a cold glass of water in the desert, right? I was just like, wow, awesome. And so, there's a couple ways that I could have worked with him. One was, I live in Chicago, he's in Utah, so I could have done it over Zoom virtually, but the type of therapy that I needed didn't really lend itself well to that style. So I decided to do what he calls an intensive. So I went there for 10 days roughly or so. We did 2 sessions a day. And you're kind of it's pretty challenging, right? To do two of the therapy sessions in a day. But I'll say this, he's amazing and his staff they're just terrific. The therapists there are the best. And I just went in with the attitude. I knew it was going to be tough, and it was tough early on, but then it got a lot better. And again, the staff there, they're really supportive. So I got through it fine, and then that made just a huge difference. I felt it when I was there, but what was interesting was he told me that you know the arc of your recovery is going to continue when you get home. And so I had homework for a few months. In fact, I still do exercises now, even though that therapy started in November. I still do it now, really out of choice, but I continued to recover well into the spring. And
Awesome.
so so my visual overwhelm, it eased, and eventually much of that went away in my day to day. And my sleep improved dramatically. So there would be times where I would, and I still do have some triggers that will trigger insomnia and sleep disruption. What's fascinating now is that I get a neural response more than a physical one. So I don't even feel the visual overwhelm piece, but I'll get a neural response where my nervous system is kicked into sort of the sympathetic side, and I can't sleep, right? But
Mm.
that's rare now because I'm getting more experience with it, and now I avoid the bad neighborhoods where I know if I go there, I'm going to have a problem.
Mhm.
So again, Dr. Duvall is a saint. He is, and I thank you for having him on the podcast because that's really how I learned about him. And he's worked with just a lot of folks with brain injuries because his office is in the same office building and complex as Cognitive FX,
Mhm.
which is another terrific concussion clinic. And I know that they share patients. So he just has a lot of experience that he can fall back on. And so another one who very key in my recovery.
Mm. Beautiful. And again, this is, yeah, I will link the episodes that he was on this podcast to in the show notes as well, because yes, it is. I would love for people to hear that. He is great. And it does make a difference to be with someone who has experience working with people with concussions. They've seen it, they know, like he was like, oh yeah, we can help that. Like it's so nice. Like you said, it's so refreshing to be like, oh, good, and you can help me. This is a big deal. It's a very big deal.
It is, and he's intellectually curious, so that he's brought a lot of new things into to the therapy, which is great.
Mhm.
And again, this is just my bias, but I think you do need to go beyond. You certainly want a board certified neuro-optometrist, but I would just encourage you find somebody who has worked with concussion patients because I mean, Dr. Duvall works with a lot of different patient groups, right? A lot of
Yeah.
children and a lot of people who've not had brain injuries, but his experience is invaluable in dialing in, figuring out, okay, what's going on with you, and then figuring out what's the diagnosis and what's the appropriate therapy.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And can I ask you I know that you, at one point we were talking, I think it was after you had gone to NCX, but tell me if I'm wrong. I just remember you saying, I just need to take a break from concussion stuff for a little while.
Yeah, that
Tell
was
me
after,
about that.
that was after NCX.
Okay. Yeah.
NCX or wherever you decide to go, it's challenging, right? Because you're really um, you're leaning into your symptoms. There's no two ways about it. You're doing things. At least I'm doing things I've been avoiding for a while.
Mm,
So
yeah.
and your nervous system. Honestly, like what? Like what are you doing, man? And so that part is really tough. And I remember getting back. I was like, okay, I just need to like kind of chill out here, and I wanted to stop thinking about it as well, right? Because I think that is one of the challenging emotional components of this is managing your emotions, right? It's the fear of relapse. It's constantly this stuff that I was guilty of, constantly monitoring your symptoms. And I just remember, I would be at a store or somewhere, I'm thinking, wow, did I just get triggered? Is that, oh, am I not gonna be able to sleep tonight? And that was going on a lot, kind of 24/7. And so anyway, I needed a break from that stuff.
Were
Yeah.
you able to take it one? Were you able to just be like,
Yeah,
I'm just going to live my life and not think about it for a little while?
I did.
Good.
And my family's really supportive. And I think I know my son got really tired of me talking about my concussion all the time. So he's like, dude, stop talking about right? Because I would read some really interesting research paper, right? And I'd be like, oh man, check this out. And they're like, nah, I'm good. So yeah.
Well, I think that brings up an important point that there is balance to be found. Like it is, and it's so hard to find that balance, but we do need, it is important to be monitoring your symptoms, to be like, you want to be aware of them so that you can, structure things or be like, understand what's happening for you. But it is possible to lean too far into the over obsessing over it, right? And just like constant monitoring and finding a balance there. And also, prioritizing recovery, which you do for that 2 weeks or whatever that you go to a clinic. You are taking a break from everything else and it's all recovery. And then it might be necessary to take a break from recovery for a little bit too. So it is
Yeah.
so funny how I feel like this is a general life theme of finding there's two good things and they're in opposition to each other, and we have to like figure out where we're at and what's best for us in the moment in between those, which way to
Oh,
lean. So,
that's right. That's right. Yeah, I would be. I think I haven't mentioned, but my wife was the most important person in terms of my recovery because Tracy was, she had to pick up a lot of slack, stuff I couldn't do, but just for her emotional support was invaluable. And there were periods where I remember one period where I counted up my sleep and it was like 3 hours. I'd slept for 3 hours in a 72-hour period. And I was just, oh my gosh, it was just so hard. And you're not easy to live with in those times. It's very hard sometimes to communicate. But she was just really always by my side. So that was, I would say, yeah, the most important part of my recovery. And the one thing I did do, and again, we're just really lucky in that we had good insurance, so it was not expensive. As I found a therapist to help me through that time, and it was really with communication, I would say primarily,
like a,
because
a talk therapist, you mean?
a talk therapist, yeah,
Okay. For you and your
emotional.
wife, like an emotional, yeah, like,
Yeah, it was really for me because you know your loved ones don't really know. They don't want to ask you. They don't want to take your temperature all the time, but they also want to know how you're doing. And so for me, managing communication with them was important, and it was something I was not good at. So having someone help me process my emotions, but also then also help me like, okay, like you might want to try these things. I mean, they're simple, and you and I had talked about them too, which is just having some way to communicate with with your loved ones, right? Well, hey, today, today I'm feeling like it's a 1 out of 10. It's not good.
Mhm.
Or today, hey, it's an 8 out. I'm feeling much better. Just so they can get a sense of how to, to work around you, to live with you, if you will.
Mhm. Yeah, the communication is so important and a, a challenge without brain injury, but then add a brain
Yes,
injury in, it's
yes,
even harder.
yes.
So, yeah, yeah. Oh, I appreciate you sharing that, and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing all of that. The therapy can be very, very beneficial in all of these things that you're saying. So I'm so glad you're able to do that. And your wife is amazing. We got to do a session together as well. And
Yeah, you
she's
did.
so great. And she loves you so much. Like it's always, I always feel inspired by when I get to talk to my own clients and then their family members. It's to see, it is, it takes a toll on everybody. This injury
Mhm.
it impacts every single person who is close to the person who had the injury. And it's, but it's so beautiful to see, the love and the trying to support and trying to figure out how to support themselves while supporting you. Like it is not easy, but it's beautiful to see people who are doing it. So thank you, Tracy. Shout out to Tracy. She's amazing.
There you go. There
um,
you go.
so good.
So yeah, so at this point, I have been doing a lot better. I'm a real college football fan, and so one of the things I had to give up last year was most of the season. That was part of my world getting smaller. But I did manage to go to one game in November after I'd come back from seeing I'd come back from NCX and come back from seeing Dr. Duvall for my therapy, and I did go to a game, and it wasn't perfect. It was a happy a night game, big stadium, a lot of people,
A
but I
lot of
got through it.
lights.
A lot of lights, but I got through it, which was awesome, and I was able to sleep a little bit that night as well, which was nice, and so. Um, I have done some things like that, and my day to day is really kind of back to normal. Like I can go to retail stores and I can go to doctor's appointments and I can do the stuff I did before, which was terrific. I am going to go back to see Dr. Duvall in July, and we're going to do a little more therapy. I still have there's a couple of things that still trigger me, and so I'm going to try and work through those.
Awesome.
But overall, yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, so when we got on the phone today and I was like, "How are you?" It was just such an enthusiastic, "I'm great." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yes, that is the best thing
Yes.
ever." I'm so happy. And it is huge. Like the fact that your day to day is normal, like you can do a day and feel okay, like that is a really, really big deal and a huge cause for celebration. So, and you put in the work for it, but it's just beautiful to see that it is possible and that you can get there. Like I'm so happy, so happy for you and for you to be sharing this. I want people to hear that it matters to know that it's possible.
Yes, and I'm the first to tell you that sometimes improvement does feel elusive, but it does happen. Even when it was bumpy, I was still moving in the right direction. There were days when I feel like I was having relapses and moving backwards, but it's one of those things where you kind of have to look at it in hindsight, and you can see how things have progressed, right? How they've gotten better.
Yeah. Well, and like you said before, it's nonlinear. So sometimes, yeah, it feels like improvement. And then there's probably something in the back of your head like, is this really improvement? Can I believe it? Am I actually doing better? Or is it going to be another huge setback soon? Like, do you
Mm.
want to talk to that at all? Have you had that experience?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, you mean like yeah, feeling like you're going backwards.
Well, yeah, or even just like letting yourself believe that you are improving because
Yeah,
of the fear that there might be a backslide. But and again, there may be it's nonlinear. It's up and down. And so, but
yeah,
the general trend is upward and you see gradual improvement of like, oh, okay, today I was okay. I could do my normal stuff and I slept okay. And then tomorrow, oh, it happened again. Maybe I can believe this, like it's
That's
probably
that's
gradual.
a good way. That's a really good way to put it. Yes, there are days even now where I feel like I'll wonder, like, I wonder if I did a little too much of that. And then 9 times out of 10, the answer has been no.
Good.
I'm fine. So, but there's a lot of that. There's a ton of that, and more early on in the recovery and the healing process,
Mhm.
particularly like when I was at NCX. It was like popcorn. I was just all over, like good, bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then but it was generally moving up, and it was helpful. The therapist would remind me, like, no, like, from where you started, right, you've made huge strides.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's helpful to have outside eyes on you to remind you and to be able to say, oh no, here from my perspective, let me see, tell me you what I'm seeing. That
yes,
can be helpful. And it was so good to see you when you were out here. I did get to go down and we got to play play some games together. It was
that's
fun.
right. Yeah,
It was good times. Yeah, no, therapy's so fun. Maybe more fun for the therapists, but it is
definitely.
fun.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
no, but I love that. Thank you. And tell me if you could go back in time and give yourself advice back in the early days of the injury and the recovery, what would you tell yourself?
Right. So I remember early on it was probably our first discussion where you would say, no, that there is hope, and you will recover. And early on, I don't know how much I believe that. And I think I would go back and just say, you've got to be more positive about this, right? And I think I was too negative. And so that's probably what I tell myself, which is just, no, you have hope, right?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think it's fair and understandable that you were negative, like you had experiences that led you to feel that way, right? Like it
Yeah.
wasn't unfounded. So I think, but I appreciate that perspective that like no, hope matters. And so yeah, I don't know, I think it does. um if you can leave the door open for hope, at least, right? Like even if you're feeling
Yeah.
negative, if you're not feeling it, you're like, I don't see how this is even possible, but like, okay, but maybe. Like, and so it's good to hear that. Like if you could go back in time, that would be your reassurance to yourself. Like, no, do have hope. It's gonna, like, it is possible to find healing and recovery from this. That matters. If you, I kind of like, if you can, if you can even just like let that, if you have a desire to believe it, let that desire work in you. Like let it simmer and leave that door open for hope, because that it does matter. So thank you for sharing that. I think that
It does. Navigating it, you're navigating your symptoms and you're navigating the system. And it's really hard.
so hard.
And that's why I just think having a guide like working with you that makes such a big difference, because system is not, my son has gastrointestinal issues, GI issues, very similar to PCS. And I find my experience kind of valuable, or a little bit valuable, in just understanding what he's had to deal with. And again, it's, our system is just not set up for this, right? We're used to, break your leg, get an X-ray, get a cast, go to therapy, hey, you're done.
Mhm.
And then on top of that, nobody really understands. That's the wrong way to put it. There's not great awareness or understanding of what PCS is. So when you cancel your cookout, or when you can't join your friends, and like, I remember I was in last May, my son graduated from college, and I managed to kind of drag myself through the commencement ceremony. It was in a darkened commencement hall with bright lights, and I was just like, wow, I had my eyes closed through a lot of it. And then we went out for dinner later on, and I'm like staring at my plate, because I got to the point where I just couldn't, right? I was so overwhelmed. And I think that, it's tough, because a lot of folks just really don't understand what you're going through.
Mhm.
And so they're kind of looking at you like, hey, why are you Debbie Downer? And I,
Right.
all right,
Right.
like because I'm a puddle on the floor right now, right? I'm just like I'm dying here. So anyway, those are specific challenges to this. It is really a tough.
Yeah. Yes. And this is part of why this podcast is existing. And also, I'm so grateful that you're willing to share your experience because I think the more we can get this out there, hopefully we can raise things up so that there is more awareness and people can be better informed and understanding because it does. Yeah, we still have a long ways to go. I do think that positive changes are happening. There is more awareness in general and things are shifting. So thank you for being part of that shift. I think that
Mm.
is important. I would love to hear what your advice would be or your suggestions to the loved ones, the people who are helping the people. So speaking of people not understanding, what would you say to the loved ones here?
Wow, it's so tough. I guess you just have to be. I don't have a lot of advice, unfortunately. I wish I did. I saw this question and I thought, and it just kind of stumped me. I guess you have to bring out your best patient and loving self because it's just really tough. And I guess don't be shy about getting help for yourself. You know,
Yeah.
and I think the communication piece is really, really important. But it's really challenging. It's obviously challenging for the person who's dealing with it, but it's also really challenging for the loved ones too.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any ideas or suggestions as far as communication? Like what worked well for you guys?
Mostly the simple stuff. I do think that you need a style that works for you, which is figure out how often do you want to check in, and because we all have different styles, some people want to know how you're doing all the time, and you may want to only talk about it, once or twice a day. So
Yes.
figure out what works, and then real simple can be, we just use a scale,
Mm,
1 to 10. I'm a 1. Okay, I'll just stay out of your way right now. But I had a
yeah.
rough night, and there was just some nights where I didn't sleep at all, and I just wasn't there to talk about it. I'm like, man, I didn't. And it was so, rather than get into that, and it was just, it was really tough. I'm really struggling, and it was a 1.
Mm,
Okay, got it. When you're feeling a little better, when we can chat more.
yeah.
So keep it simple. I guess that'd be my advice.
I love it. Yep. That's very good advice. And okay, sorry. Like blanking on my next question is, I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you about any advice, and you have, unfortunately, a lot of experience with insomnia and sleep disturbance. What have you learned from that? What would you like people to know if they're struggling with that? What would you recommend?
Sure. So it's interesting. You were very helpful in this regard around, working with the nervous system. So lots of breathing exercises, using the Resemax. My case, and everybody is going to be different. I highly recommend doing those things. They're helpful. What I found with my issue was that I could not, there's only maybe a couple instances I could think where I could actually change the direction of where things were going. So in other words, if I was experiencing insomnia, I was not going to sleep. I could do all of the breathing exercises. I could do them all night, and it just would not change things for me. And so what worked for me was we kind of came up with a mantra, Tracy and I. It was, it's just one night, and that's what I would just tell myself. And it was sort of just the grace of saying, you know what, it's just one night, and I'll get through this. And in my experience, the next night was always, better. I would
Mm,
sleep better the next night. So that's what it was. It was just sort of like, okay, I'm not going to allow this. I'm not going to get upset about it. I'm not going to feel the anxiety about it. It's going to happen. It'll be better tomorrow, and just get through it. But so there weren't. I didn't. have magic cures that, when my nervous system was dysregulated and when the cortisol was rocking, I wasn't going to sleep.
Mhm.
And I think over time I was at peace with that. And I didn't, I was still tired the next day, but I wasn't upset about it anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think that's so important. Just that idea that, there are things that you can try, things that may help, and I think were helpful sometimes, but knowing that sometimes the nature of the beast and this injury and your personal body and nervous system and experience is going to be that it doesn't work out the way you're hoping. All of the
Mm.
tricks don't work sometimes, and if that's the case, then learning to, I know I want to, I don't, the word acceptance, accept it might not ring well with some people, which is fair. But
Yes.
really that is the key to it, of like, if you cannot add a whole layer of hard on top of what's already hard by thinking it shouldn't be
Yes.
happening or what's wrong or how, like, being mad about it, like that just, yeah, you're still going to be tired, but you don't have to have all of the anger and the other stuff on top of it, which I know is so much easier said than done. And I know it was a long process, but the fact that you were able to get to that and that you can talk about it, I think is important and hopefully helpful for people to hear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's two quick things that helped. Walking was very helpful for me.
Like
Very
walking
helpful
the
in
next
being able
day afterwards, or to help
just,
you get to
yeah,
sleep.
just not to get to sleep the next
Okay.
day,
Okay.
just walking. And I started walking, and I remember, I can't remember who, it was one of your podcasts, but someone was talking about how walking was an integral part of their recovery, and
Mm,
kind of adopted that myself. And so I just started walking every day, and it did help me a lot.
awesome.
The other thing is I'm an avid gardener, and I was I'm also a horticulturist. And so the one thing I've learned over time is that being in green space is very calming
Mm,
for the brain. So I would also encourage people to, if you have a park, an arboretum, a botanical garden, go there. The magic
yes.
time is about 20 to 30 minutes, but there are real positive benefits that you get from that. And then there was a real quick study, I think it was a Danish study, where they had two groups of patients who had their gallbladders removed. And they put one group went into the hospital room where the window looked into, it just looked over a brick yard. Okay, nothing there. The other group of patients, their window overlooked a small grove of trees. And what they found over time was that the patients whose window overlooked the grove of trees, that uh, the length of stay was shorter by 1 or 2 days, and they used far less pain medication. And so the point is just green space is really helpful for your recovery. So to the extent that you can go for a walk, if your symptoms allow, go to a park, like I said, or a forest preserve, or wherever you can go, even around the block if there are trees, just get out and do that. Again, 20 to 30 minutes is the magic. So
Hmm.
magic number.
Beautiful. Thank you. I will always welcome advice for people to get outside and be in nature. This is so important for everybody's mental and emotional health and recovery too. I thank you for sharing that. That's super interesting, actually, that study. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Awesome. We are I could talk to you all day, but we are unfortunately running short on time here. So tell me, is there anything else that you want to make sure that we cover or talk about before we close up here?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for being willing to share this. I, like, from the beginning, I was like, Steve is so awesome. I hope that someday I get to bring him on the podcast. So I'm so grateful that you're at a place where you feel like you can look back on this, that it's a thing that, and I know it's always continuing, right? We never haven't had that injury, but the fact that you can say what worked, what helped, what made a difference for you is a really big deal. And I'm so grateful that you're able to be here and willing to share this experience.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It's so good. If people want to contact you, you're willing to, I think you said you were
Yes.
willing to let people reach out if they had comments,
Yes.
questions, concerns, how can they do that?
Probably just shoot me an email. I think you can just post my email if that
Okay.
works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll put the email in the show notes. All right. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Steve. Have a fabulous rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Okay.
I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.